Welcome to Sunshine Stories. Please join us today for the story of Sleeping Beauty. Long ago, there lived a king and queen who wished to have a child. At last, the queen gave birth to a little girl. The king prepared a great feast, and he invited all his friends and all the fairy godmothers of the kingdom. At the end of the feast, the fairies gave the princess their magic gifts. One gave her beauty, another virtue, the third riches. Altogether, they gave her everything that would make her a wonderful girl. Just then, an old wicked fairy appeared, and she cried spitefully,
"When the princess reaches the age of 15, she shall prick her finger on a spindle and fall down dead."
At that moment, one of the fairy godmothers, who had not yet given her wish, stepped forward and said, "The princess shall not die, but she shall fall into a deep sleep for 100 years. The king gave the order that every spindle in the kingdom should be burned to avoid the misfortune foretold by the old fairy. One day, soon after she was 15, the young princess wandered in the palace when the king and queen were away from home. The princess came to an old tower. The princess climbed the winding stairs and found a small door at the top of the tower. She opened the door, and there, in a little room, was an old woman busily spinning with a spindle. "Let me try." With that, she took the spindle in her hand to try it. But as soon as she touched the spindle, the curse started working, and she pricked her finger. The moment she pricked herself, she fell down in a deep sleep. Strangely enough, the sleep spread over the whole palace. The cook, who was about to hit the kitchen boy because he had forgotten something, went to sleep. The maid, who was about to cook a chicken, fell asleep. All the people and animals throughout the palace, even the fire flickering on the hearth and the wind blowing over, went to sleep. When all were asleep, a thick wood of prickly bushes began to grow around the palace, and it went on growing until it covered the whole palace. Many long years passed. One day, a prince came to the land and heard the story of the wondrous palace. An old man said to the prince that a beautiful princess had been sleeping and waiting to be awakened by a courageous prince. When the prince reached the thick wood of prickly bushes, it turned into a mass of beautiful roses, which parted to let him pass unharmed. He walked into the palace yard and saw the little birds asleep in the trees. The horses lying asleep too. As he entered the palace, he saw the king and queen lying asleep in the great hall with all their courtiers. He went further, and everything was so quiet in the palace. The young prince went on his way until he came to the tower. He opened the door of the little room where the beautiful princess was sleeping. So beautiful was she that the prince fell in love with her and kissed her. The moment he touched her lips, the 100 years just passed, and the princess opened her eyes, looking at the prince fondly. "Is it you, my prince? I have waited a long while," said the beautiful princess. The awakening of the princess made the whole palace awake. The breeze started to blow, and the perfume of the roses spread throughout the palace. The little birds in the trees sang the rest of the song they had been singing. The cook started chasing the boy. The maid bustled about catching the chicken. The fire in the kitchen flared up, and the roast started spitting. The great wedding of the prince and princess was celebrated, and they lived happily ever after. The end.